I tacked it in place, a couple tacks on top here, so those pieces line up. That radius lines up, and as you can see, there's a gap here. So what I'll do is I'll slowly take care of that. I'll tack it and then keep pushing that down and lining those two pieces up. So so that radius is right on the money. Try to get all the pieces lined up as close to perfect as possible, because you know there's just not much. You can't sand the thickness of 22 gauge sheet metal is not very much. So if you don't have that close, you go to sand it, you'll sand right straight through it. So okay, so I finished welding both edges. So this is done and the bottom's done as well. So you see the difference in the welds. This is 22. I set the settings lower, and so I just barely stitched those two edges together. And it's easier. What I try to do is when I'm welding and I'm trying to limit my burn through, I will weld this in this direction. So in other words, instead of going straight at it, I will weld this like that and basically weld into my previous puddle, and that will limit your burn through. So, but it'll still meld them together. When I do this here, where I want to get good penetration, I weld right at it, straight into it. Can you see that? So when I'm welding this out here, I weld in this direction, right at it, in about an inch at a time. And what that does, it'll go right, melt it through and give you a puddle on the back side. That doesn't matter, it's on the back side. But here you don't want it, you don't want that finish on that edge, or you got a lot of work to try to clean that up. So again, what I do here, I turn and I weld this direction. I stitch it about an inch, move over an inch, and as you can see, that gives you a really pretty nice finish there. I've got a spot there that I tacked it previously, but look at that edge. That's all really nice and clean. Very little work to do on that. And this piece here, I'll just take the cut off. Any spot and run that levels it off. Finish it up with the disc. No, I don't have my glass or safety glasses on here, but I'm just going to show you a quick. So I videoed that, and unfortunately my camera, I looked up, I had a couple videos on that and some other stuff. Looked up and it said failure or something, and the SD card had to reformat. So I lost everything that I just did. So I'm going to walk through it real quick. So I finished up the edges, as I said, on my T-dolly, and then after I tacked everything, I took a hand dolly and I took the radius. There's different radiuses on these that you can select from. I took that radius there and I basically just laid it up in the corner of this edge. Took a hammer and tightened everything up. As you can see, my seam right here is just really tight, and that's the way you want it, tight. And so when you hammer and dolly, I try to pull the metal together. And so if this side's high, I don't just smack it straight down. I take it and I strike it in this direction. So I strike it, pull it, pull it, pull it, go right on down through there. And then I turn it and strike this piece this way. So what that does is that pulls those two together and makes for a nice finish when you're done. I also set my welder a little bit hotter. I tend to go to the next setting. This is 22 gauge material. So I always set it on 20 gauge. The manufacturer setting at 20 gauge. And that gives you a nice penetration. I like it because it'll just burn through quicker and melt that stuff together. And so, as you can see, I got good penetration on the back side here. That's key, just to make sure you're getting good penetration. Usually you can tell by on a piece like this, I'll go through and tack it and get it lined up, but then I'll weld an inch, come over here, weld an inch, come over here, weld an inch, and then I'll cool the whole panel. When you get radiuses and curves and bends in them, you don't have to worry too much about it warping, but you still have to cool it. You got to be careful. You could distort this edge and start getting it ripply looking. So the bottom here, I'll just tack it, set my settings lower, tack it, and then I'll have a nice edge here. So I'm going to go ahead and continue welding this, weld this area, and then I'll be back. Hopefully I won't lose any more video today. I'll be back and then I'll grind this down and show you what it looks like. I ground my edges off and sanded them. Use the big grinder, 80 grit, and then I use the little grinder and finished it up, and then I finished it with an 80 grit, or I'm sorry, 100 grit DA right now. So as you can see, that edge is pretty good. I mean, it doesn't need anything other than epoxy. And then I clean this edge up down here as well with just a finishing disc. Put it down in there and clean that up a little bit. So that piece looks really good. I want to cap the back here down to the hood. So I'll work on that next. But I wanted to kind of show you the different profiles. So you see, I still got to touch up a little spot right here, but I'll do that when I put my back in. But hopefully you can see that profile. It's rounded all the way, both pieces. If you remember, I ran this through the bead roller and put a radius on it, and did the same thing with this bottom piece and radius it that way. And then I welded it right where those two pieces meet. So now you have a nice rounded edge, and that's what I wanted for that piece back there. The difference between that piece and this piece down here that I did for my hood filler, where my grill butts up. This one I just rounded this piece. It's got the round edge, and then this comes up square. So you can see the difference. You might call this a quarter round and this a half round. And I did that intentionally because when my grill, when it's on, my grill is a 1/2 inch away, or 5/8 away from here. My grill cover, I should say. And so I want a straight edge there, but I didn't want a blunt edge. I wanted that just rounded a little bit. So hopefully you can see what I'm talking about, and that makes sense. I just think that's a nice profile for when it's meeting another parallel piece. This is not meeting a parallel piece, but you could see if that was meeting, if I use that same profile down here, it has a much wider gap and it just doesn't look as nice. Again, see the difference? So it's just a little detail that maybe you wouldn't necessarily have to do, but it gives you some options. I realize you may not put a filler in the hood, or you may not make a piece like this, but hopefully what I'm doing will give you it'll just give you some ideas of what can be done. You know, as I said, this you may not make this piece, but you may be able to apply what I did in your project, and you know, see how nice that piece looks. So maybe that'll work for you somewhere. So I'm going to continue on, fill this back in, and I cut a piece sheet metal for the back, and all I needed is come down 5/8 here and round it off so it misses all these, misses the 2 lights, and then I need to run the wire through there. So I'm going to weld that on the back side and then shape it. I started by hemming. I hemmed this edge right here, so it's got a nice finish to it, and that will go right against this piece here. So my plan is, this is my plan, I don't know if it's going to work, but I'll put 2 fasteners right here. Maybe put a rivet nut in there, I'm not sure yet. And then I think I'll make this so it hooks on there and comes down. Put 2 fasteners in and I'm done. Put those in equal spaces on each side. I think that'll look good. So that's the plan. We'll see if it works. I'll get started I'll weld that edge, clean this up a little bit more, and I'll be back.